Good morning, YouTube. This is David with Boatnet Films, and we are continuing our improvements on our 1989 Corvette Roadster. This will be episode 11 if you've been following along. Try not to bore you with it too much, but today we're going to put new wheel bearings in the front. You can't feel the play in it at all after I've taken the wheel off, but going down the road, there's a telltale sign. If you cross a bridge or you go against a barrier, you can hear sometimes, and I'm sure you've noticed this, your car making some noises. A lot of times it's a brake issue or something like that, but those are telltale signs that you need to look at something. And when I got the car back, I kind of really messed with the wheel, and I got a little bit of play out of it. I couldn't tell, in the handling of it or whatever, but I could hear the sound of the bearings in there. And these cars are designed to do 150 mile an hour plus, so you don't want to risk wheel bearings. I mean, you can lose a whole front wheel like that, and it's been known to happen. I've had a friend of mine that dealt with that in a police cruiser. He lost a whole wheel off of a later model Charger doing a transport. Wasn't his fault, but it happened, and of course he saved the car, and he didn't wreck it, pulled it over, but lost the whole damn wheel, and it can happen. Alright, let's see what we got. There's a huge price range difference whenever you start looking at these. The original ones can cost up to over $300, and the cheapest down to $35. You get what you pay for. But I researched these a little bit, and on Rock Auto there was a diagram from the manufacturer. I think these will be nice, and even here you can see the breakdown. And some of the cheaper ones, they just didn't say anything about them. I think this will be fine. We'll see. See what we got here. They always send you one of these. And these are remanufactured, I do believe. That didn't feel like 10 lug nuts, but it is. So, very nice. I paid, I think, I didn't get the cheapest ones, but I paid, I think, about $48 a piece for these, where at AutoZone you can get their brand remanufactured for $80, and then you can get a remanufactured actual GM part for, I think it was well over $100. I think it was like $175 was the difference on a remanufactured GM part. Again, you get what you pay for, but these are going to be better than wheel bearing assemblies with 160,000 miles on them. These very well could be the original ones. The brand name on these are Durago, and they're pretty tight as far as the bearings. It's tighter than I would install the older style bearings. These Corvettes were ahead of their time in 1989 to have this style wheel bearing setup. The Mustangs weren't doing this for sure at that time. So this is another interesting thing about the Corvette. Everybody is pretty much going with this type now, but in 1989 to have this technology and use that gives you an idea of how ahead of its time it really was in the design. On episode 9, and I hope you like my little drawing here of the radiator, we installed a variable cooling fan control system, and I reamed through the radiator and installed it like they said. Of course, the radiator is not leaking, it's fine, but I think there's a better way to do that, and I wanted to share that with you. Hindsight is 2020. If you'll look at my little map here, you can see the sensor here and the wire. What I would do if I were to do this again, on the edge here next to the inlet, the tubes are exposed that run across, and I would actually, in the future, if I were ever to do this again, I would just come in here and mount it vertically in this area. And this is kind of strange, but you could even do like a little piece of sheet metal and cover it and run your zip ties through these holes and around, to do one on each side and kind of block it in so that it's not getting affected by the fan or whatever. But I would vertical mount the sensor instead of drilling through the center of a radiator. Wanted to share that with you. This is an idea. You've got your inlet here and the bottom where it comes out in your radiator cap, but you could come in just right here and mount it right in here, and you're going to touch the fins there, and you're going to get just as accurate of a reading. Plus, if you've got a variable relay, you can control when you want the sensor to come on just by turning the dial left or right, and that way you don't risk poking a hole in your radiator. Alright, if you're just replacing your wheel bearings, you can take the this one's got dual calipers, which is nice, but you can take the whole assembly off with just 2 bolts. You don't have to break the pads down. And from the inside here and here, these were really tight. I don't have the torque specs though in the manual. They forgot to list it for this and that. And I can barely feel play in it, but I can feel play. But I'm going to take the time now just to clean all this up before I remove this, and that way I don't get any muck in there, but we'll clean that out too. This is unbelievable. That's just what I scraped off. And I'll go over it again with brake cleaner and try and get it back down to the aluminum, and I'll blow it out good first. Be careful around this thing, and you don't even want to mess with that. And they're not attached to these hubs, which is nice. On the newer ones they are, but I've done these before, and then you'll get sometimes just a anti-lock light, and just by touching them or changing these, you'll damage the sensor, or they'll think so. But hopefully that won't be the case with these. Yeah, these are made out of aluminum. Of course you know that, but had you just looked at that, you never would have known otherwise until I took a wire brush and some Brillo pads and some brake cleaner, and that's about 20 minutes to get it that clean. I cannot believe how nasty this thing is, and it was regularly serviced at the dealership. But man, whenever you're working on your stuff, just clean as you go. Take care of your stuff. It's a Corvette. I mean, take care of your stuff. Unbelievable. Alright, here's all the tools I use to get it out. And hold it by hand. You can't really tell it's bad. You can't feel the space in it. But once you put the tire on it, the outer edges, you've got the leverage where you can feel it. You're going to need a 13/16 to get the bracket brace off on this. And we may have to press the pads in to get it to go back on. We'll see. And if we do, we'll have to take that outer pad off. But the bolts and nuts that hold the bearing assembly in there are 15 millimeter. So I've got a socket ratchet and a wrench, and I cleaned mine up, scraped it off. Yours may not be like that with this. And then blew everything out real good before I took it apart. And I'm soaking all my bolts in brake fluid and nuts. I will clean them up and before I put them back on. This bracket I've got pushed out of the way on this side. It's got 2 little bolts or little nuts that have to come off. Remove the bracket. Be real careful and just get it out of the way, and then you can get to your tension bolts that hold it on. But you know, I had to clean that up real good. Wire brush, brake cleaner, and be real careful not to get brake cleaner on your rubber seals and stuff. Even down here, was real careful and not to get it to soak on that. My grease fitting is broken off on the bottom. I'm assuming it bottomed out somewhere, so that's not good. Eventually I'll have to replace that, but I've got them on this and that, and I will grease these when I put it back together. Try not to even handle the inside of these, but these, when you put them back on, it says to use the hole, get your bolts in, but you'll have to do that before or after you get it completely off. So I'm going to go ahead and put these in, and then you can just kind of turn it off, let them set back, and gently set it in. And just set all your bolts. And on all my nuts, I am going to use a little bit of Loctite just to make sure we don't have any issues. Okay, yeah, the brakes just tapped right back on. I didn't have to recess them at all. I put a couple of lug nuts on just to hold the disc in, and also use brake clean. Get all your fingerprints off real good, and we'll do that again. But I was going to show you in the back here. After we torque these down, there's a little bracket here with these little bitty nuts. And they're made out of almost nothing. They're hollow. But it's just to hold this bracket on. Of course you can't see that, but that's the dealio. And I'll tighten those right back down, but there's your after picture. And there is no play at all now. Had a very slight amount of play with no leverage with the wheel off. We'll see what it feels like with the wheel on. But I feel good about that. And we cleaned up our A-arms a little bit, and I will go around the inner fender well with some soft scrub or something and try and clean them up as well. But you couldn't even tell the shocks were yellow, and they are. And they need to be replaced as well. We'll get to that later. Just at this point, rinse and repeat on driver's side. And we're just going to do a quick before and after. Here's after. And I'll do the driver's side now. And here's before. What a nasty mess. I'm not looking forward to this. I just washed my hands. Got to be done. Okay, we got our wheel bearings in. And we've bled all the fluid out and got it back this well. There's still trash down in there. I got as much of it out as I could, and I'm going to tell you, these cars with the dual pistons in the front, they are not easy to bleed the brakes. In the book, there's a certain order you have to do it. You want the rear end lower than the front end, and you have to pull the rear tires. I think it's a 10 degrees. You start with the left rear, go to the right rear, left front, right front. And got all the fluid out of it, got air in the lines, and had a hard time getting it bled. But went around it twice, and actually ended up buying a tool for this. And I highly recommend, if you're going to be doing brakes, I think this is a wise investment. This thing works really well. The only issue that I had, and you'll have to do this if you use a vacuum pump to bleed your brakes, whenever you loosen the bleeder valve, you're going to get air around the threads. And you can look in there and see that rubber cap, you can take a screwdriver and just pry that off very easily and get that out of the way. But we were getting air going in as fast as we could pump it out. The trick to that is there's a line wrench made for this. You want to be real careful with the nuts and not strip them out. but I used the box end of a wrench and put it on the hose, and I used a Vaseline and packed around the base of the bleeder screw that kept any air from passing through the threads. And you pump up your tool to about 15 pounds and it should hold there. You're most likely, if you're getting continuous air, it's probably coming in through a tube or something, but you can even take a little Vaseline and pack a little bit in that tube. Vaseline to me is a lot cleaner than grease for the brake system. A lot of people will use grease, but again, Vaseline has come in handy there. It's a lot cleaner, and when you're done and you've got them tightened back down, you can wipe it off real easy. Another thing that we got, which I'm really happy to see, it's not cheap, but it is what it is, and I got this from batty.com. You can go see his stuff on YouTube, Crazy Uncle Burton, all one word. I'll put a link on there. But we got our polarized film for the instrument cluster. We've checked it with polarized sunglasses. We know the information is there. We know it works. And we got this. He takes PayPal only, so you'll have to do PayPal. My wife has PayPal and did this, and I just paid her back. But I got it within 3 days. He got it sent out to me. And also, we ordered I think they're called xenon bulbs. They're an upgrade bulb. They don't use as much power, which is a good thing. The instrument clusters on these, it wasn't a perfect science. Now I can tell mine, when the fan kicks on, the bulbs will dim out on it now. So there's an issue there. It's drawing a lot of power on those bulbs, and I can tell it's doing that. And also in the kit, he'll send you a little bit of black touch-up paint, razor blades to scrape it off, and a brush, which is neat. And I've looked on eBay, and even the ones that don't come with this kit, it's the same price. Crazy Uncle Burton, really good guy, I think. I've watched a lot of his stuff on YouTube. And again, it's batty.com, and you can order this through PayPal if this is something you need, or even to upgrade your bulbs. So I'm looking forward to getting into that. Next video we'll probably do that. But after changing the fluid in the brake system, I was afraid I was going to have to change the master cylinder, because I was getting real spongy brakes. If they go spongy and then they come back. But I drove it a lot this morning, went to IHOP, and really changing the fluid is all the difference in the world. This thing really tight brakes on it. Real happy with the brakes. We're getting there slowly. Another thing I wanted to discuss with you were the pros and cons of bypassing your throttle body with a heater hose, and I've done that. I had it running across the top here, but it was rubbing, and it was actually getting pinched by the hood right there. You have very little clearance, so I came back for the summertime and ran it underneath, and then zip tied it here so I can clear my balancer there, and no clearance problems there. But I wanted to tell you, there are some differences in the way that it runs. I can't tell that I'm gaining any horsepower by running cool air through it, and I will tell you that this style tune port injection seems to be tuned to run with the coolant going through there. If the car is under 150 degrees and you lay into it a little bit, you'll get a pop out of this once in a while, and that's not good. But anything over 150 degrees, it doesn't do it at all. So it is heating it up enough not to do that. So if you do bypass these and you live in an area that's hot, you know, it's not a bad idea. It's not going to hurt it. But I do plan this winter, when it gets colder, to hook this back up, and I'll use this. This will get the car to perform better in cold. If you live in a colder area up north, I don't even recommend bypassing this. I haven't gained that much horsepower out of it. You can get a upgraded throttle body with bigger ports, and if you want better performance, that's what I would do, and I plan to do that in the future, along with some other things. I'm going to go with even a bigger cam in it, go ahead and replace the roller lifters and valves and valve seals. The valve seals are good on it, but we're going to do that in the future too. And there are different ways to gain horsepower. We're not gaining a lot by bypassing this. However, I do like the fact that it helps to run the engine a little bit cooler. At 200 degrees with that bypassed, I can lay my hand on this, and eventually it will warm it all up, but not to the point where it burns your hand, you know, on this. It's just the way these cars were designed, and they were designed this way so they could pass emissions. But there is a difference in the way it runs, and it's good and bad.